Hello, Shez. How's it going today?
Usual.
Usual? I imagine you curled up in the fetal position crying after the race that was this past weekend, Shez. What happened? You are telling people that Lewis Hamilton was going to usurp Charles Leclerc. No, you didn't actually say that, but you said he was getting close over the qualifying. We did all this expert analysis, and all of that led to a giant dud. And the only thing that's remarkable from the weekend is people dunking on Lewis as if he's never raced a Formula One car, which I take umbrage with, even though I'm a Charles Leclerc supporter. And the comments by Martin Brundle in particular, Shez, your guy in Sky F1, telling us that he felt a little bit uncomfortable by an angsty Lewis Hamilton, as if he himself has never driven an F1 car and never gotten upset with his engineer. What a concept. Lewis and his engineers, the Ferrari grade engineers, by the way, that know so much and know how to do things the right way, are not doing it Lewis's ways, evidently. So, what did you make of his weekend, Shez?
Yeah. First of all, I'm massively disappointed. I've not been able to get out of the fetal position. The only result that I could have stomached was Lewis winning the race and leading the championship
Knew it.
and going on and dominating every race from here on in because he's a seven-time world champion. It doesn't matter whether he's in a Haas
Oh,
or a Ferrari or a McLaren. It doesn't matter. He should be leading every lap of every race, no matter what. There is no outcome that is acceptable otherwise. Of course, I'm being maybe slightly facetious. I don't know,
I don't know.
but
That sounded pretty real.
yeah. But yeah, man, it was a bit chastening, I guess. But actually, I stick by what I said. I think there were definitely moments in that were not even just moments. I think the timbre of the whole weekend was actually pretty encouraging. There was a he was pretty far away. I thought when the Ferrari was at its fastest in FP2, 4 tenths is a pretty big bloody gap. But to get that down to 2 tenths and to look at we did a telemetry video on this. Go check it out. And that shows how not just that Lewis is starting to adapt and drive a bit more like Charles. That's not going to win him this intra team battle. What's going to win him this battle, if it's possible to do so, is to understand what this car needs and be able to bring to bear what he does best. And that's what was encouraging about how Lewis progressed. It wasn't just that he was trying to do what Charles was doing. He was doing what he wanted to do, and the car was responding to that. Maybe not quite as much as Charles' method, but there's a few setup tweaks and preparation laps and things like that he can do with his engineers that will allow his technique to be optimized, and then we'll see whether or not actually he can be as good as Charles. But I thought actually the race was kind of what you expected it to be. He's talking about like I've never driven this car in the wet. I don't know where a lot of the switches are. I don't know what the setup strategies and stuff are. So I was relying much more on my engineers to kind of guide me, which is something that I don't normally have to do. And you can argue, well, he's a seven-time world champion. Why doesn't he just know how to do this? Well, I'd argue that actually stepping into a brand new car like this, you're just as much of a rookie as everyone else because yes, you understand how to drive the car and you can see him in the wet. Like that touch hadn't gone. Go watch what he did laps 44 to 47 when they finally called him in. Actually, man, he was so in control of that car. It was actually joyous to watch. So he hasn't lost any of that, but him being comfortable in the car is something that's slightly different, isn't it? So that's going to take a bit of time, and it's going to, those angsty messages are just him and Ricardo Adami understanding each other and working out what level of communication they need. And I agree with you, Ammar, that like if we listen to every single radio broadcast of every driver and every race engineer from 1990 until 2025, I don't think that what you heard from Lewis Hamilton on Sunday was anything out of the ordinary. But yeah, fine. Martin Brundle clearly knows more than me, and he's going to have an opinion. Good for him.
Normally I would have said this Martin's analysis would have made sense, but Ferrari engineers are infamous. Even in this very race, you had an engineer on the other side talking about water being there because there's water there. Like, I mean, it wouldn't have been unreasonable for me to hear Lewis Hamilton getting so bloody upset with the engineers, like, just keep quiet. I mean, driver after driver with pedigree has done that over and over again. I think there are a couple of things to sort of walk away with this. Your analysis on Lewis's performance is absolutely spot on. And here's the thing, it is going to take time for Lewis to get adapted to this team. And I've heard analyst after analyst, former drivers talk about how this transition to Ferrari was difficult for the likes of Sebastian Vettel, for Alonso as well, even for Carlos himself. And so because the Italian team works in a different way, and there are clearly cultural differences, language barriers, all of these things cannot be overcome overnight, specifically not in a season where you are really on either side of looking great or dumb based on a few things going wrong. I mean, the margin for error is so tiny that it doesn't even matter. So I fully expected Lewis Hamilton to take a little bit more time. I will say, though, I did not expect this result. And the reason for that has nothing to do with Lewis or Charles for that matter. I think that what disappoints me about this weekend in the way both Ferraris performed is some of the old things came back really quickly. It felt like the Ferrari engineers and the Ferrari team as a whole were sipping on this Kool-Aid for months with all of the snazzy marketing and all of the outstanding fields and sort of the romanticism of Ferrari and Hamilton, and it just felt like they hadn't done any work behind the scenes to just get on the same page. And the fact that they couldn't communicate with each other is the more frustrating thing. Look, you make decisions that can make you look great or can make you look bad. And in those split seconds, you can go either way very quickly. But what became evident, even from Charles's side of the garage, is that they had not put in the work to get on the same page. Now, you could argue this was new for Lewis, but what was it on Charles' side? For Charles to not get another Q3 run, that was bad. These are things that shouldn't have happened, at least on that side of the garage. And so my takeaway is that they have spent way too much time on everything off track, and they really need to kind of get back on track. And it seems like because we don't have as much time as we used to in testing, and there's not just those windows are not there. This is going to take a little bit more time. I mean, to try to find a goddamn K1 switch in the middle of the race is just, it's quite crazy to kind of see that that wouldn't have been covered before. Like, use this in an overtake situation. It seems like a very fundamental thing to me, but it just seems like they have not done any work that they needed to. And Chaz, my final thing here, it would be one thing if these errors were made if the car was ahead. Given the fact that the car is already a step behind McLaren, big step, I might add, and presumably now behind Red Bull and Mercedes too. This is not a good thing. Ferrari should have been on the heels of McLaren in this season, and they just haven't shown the ability to do that throughout the weekend. And even from Bahrain, it looked like a little bit of a McLaren dominant thing. And so you add all these things up, and it just doesn't seem like they have become ready to get the season started, which I can only hope will change this coming weekend, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Amara, I think this is the issue. I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, right? It's not. I don't think it's about Lewis. Charles' side of the garage is much more worrying. And I'm gonna say something that you're probably not gonna love, but we talked about in our instant reaction after the race that you can't blame the drivers, but I'm going to come back to that again because my worry is that Charles has been so ensconced in this team that he's kind of become one of them as well. He's like also become like part and parcel of this bad communication. And I'm going to use Max and GP as an example here, because when it came to discussing the changeover, did you hear how crisp and
Yes,
right?
a few words.
It was really crisp, and it was really precise. The language that GP and Max used. Both of them have different bits of information that they can lend to that decision. GP knows what the radar shows, where the rain's going to come and when it's going to come. Max knows what the conditions of the track are and how his tyres feel on that track right now. And they melded that very confidently into okay, this is what we're going to do. And it may not have been the correct decision. Actually, coming in the same lap as Lando did would have been the right decision. But you had no doubt that they had considered all of the variables together and made a very precise decision. Whereas when you listen to Charles and Brian Botzi talking to each other, there was, it felt very much like Ferrari wanted to be paternalistic, like the pit wall wanted to just tell Charles what to do, as if it's just a one-way street. The information just flows one way. We have all of it. We're going to tell you what to do with it, not taking into account what the driver wants. And I think Charles has been exposed to that kind of communication for so long now that he also didn't really bother to offer up any information about what the conditions were like. He talked about his cockpit filling up with water, and they had a amusing exchange, ha ha ha, but it didn't really tell them anything about what they needed to do in that situation. And then they were left out on slicks for 2 laps too long. That's the fundamental problem here, right? And I've said this somewhere else as well, but I think the advantage of having Lewis in the team is that it's not that he's going to do what Sainz did and call the shots from the cockpit. That's not what the driver's there to do. You have a strategy team designed to do that. What Lewis can do is, with the lessons he has learned about the processes that were in place at Mercedes, having the team in place that allowed that to happen, that's where he can encourage is developing those processes so that in this situation, this is what you do. These are the conversations that you need to have. This is the information that you need to give. This is the information that you need to get back. And then you can make a reasoned decision. I've always said Ferrari don't have a problem in terms of resource and the amount of data they have. Their problem is how they process that data. And that is important even in a race situation. And that is what I think Lewis can bring. And again, something that I've said before is that what I worry about for Lewis is that he may not be there to benefit from the advantages that he brings the team because he's brought this stuff on board, but he should, if they listen to him, and this is what I think they've paid him for, leave Ferrari in a better position than what he found them.
Yeah, no, I think what's disappointing and maybe even offer some hope is that these are fixable problems, right? And you gave Max and GP as an example. I would say you don't even need to look that far. I would say you just go look at Lando's radio too. I mean, they look like they clearly overcame the same issue in a very, very simple manner. There was a lot of back and forth between the drivers. Lando expressed that he wanted to be on the right tires almost before the conditions kind of came into play. Now, again, we can sit here and debate whether that the outcome of these conversations is right or wrong. But the fact that that back and forth is going on, more times than not, you're going to get it right and you're going to be on the same page. And just to your point, it's fine for the Ferrari pit wall to be paternalistic, but then get it right. Cannot get it wrong. You cannot get it wrong and then act like, oh my God, like something like what is going on?
Yeah, but I don't think you can make the right call without all of the information.
That's the point.
Right, so you
and I agree
you
with
can't
you.
be totally paternalistic without knowing all the stuff. Like,
well, but then
Brian
when
Bottas
they're
doesn't know what the car feels like on the grid. Charles does. That's his job.
But Brian is telling him that there's a category 3 coming on, and Charles is saying, "Oh, we should better get it. Why are we going to put on hards?" Like that is already happened. So the driver is telling you. Now we can debate whether it's the right way of communicating, whether you need to be assertive or not. We've said this over and over again. Driver personalities are different. People on the pit wall have different personalities. GP and Max don't mind going hard at each other, and they're fine after it. Ways of communicating can be different, specifically if you come from different cultures. That is not the case here. The case is that they are not communicating, and it is not. The pit wall has to do a better job of doing all these things. And Shez, what this says is you have not done your homework. All these conversations have to be had before the race. You knew there was a 90% chance of race, but Ferrari claimed that they were probably going for more of a Sunday setup. So how could you have not discussed these things ahead of time? Why does it feel time and time again that you are making these decisions in real time and not getting it right? Like I just don't. And also, Shez, there's something to be said about Lando is in the front, Max is in the front. They're in a different vantage point. They are the first ones arriving at the scene of chaos. You have the benefit of seeing what they're doing. By that point, they were at least 15, 20 seconds ahead, give or take. You had the ability to react from the pit wall. It's not something that you had to make in the moment. I can understand it if you're leading the race and that happens to you and you're like, oh, what do we do? And like, okay, and then we made the wrong. But you are seeing what's happening ahead. Either stay out or don't, but don't get caught in between and don't do it at the worst time. That is just the absolute worst. I would have rather they stayed out, Shez, to be honest, the more I think about it. Just go ahead and stay out. If you're going to lose that race, go ahead and lose it. You stunk it up anyway, so why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing here is talking about individual situations, saying they should have handled this in this way, they should have handled this in that way. But it's more of a symptom of not having the correct way of processing that information. I think the best way to characterize this is if you look at like chess players, right? Chess grandmasters. The way that they play a match is that they have memorized particular positions or particular setups on the board at a particular point in the game, and they know that if the board is set up in this way and the pieces are in these positions, this is the move I'm supposed to make. And that's what I think a really good strategy team. I think this is what Hannah Schmidt at Red Bull does, is that they run through an entire gamut of different scenarios, leaving no stone unturned, so that when they have that situation in front of them, there's a quick conversation between pit wall and driver to go, okay, let's just make sure we've got our information correct, right? How does that fit into our plethora of different situations, right? This is what we should do. So you're not having to think about it. You're not having to try and make up a little Leonardo da Vinci style improvised strategy on the fly. You know what you're going to do because you've got a list of things that you already know. And I think your comparison with McLaren is apt, because I think they're starting to develop in that direction, right? What was encouraging about McLaren, and conversely really worrying about Ferrari, is that we've been criticizing McLaren for a season or two that operationally and strategically they aren't honed. They haven't been in a position to make those decisions, so they make bad decisions. Sochi 2021 is a good example. The conversation that they had with Lando in Silverstone about their tyre change, not double stacking in Silverstone, is another example. But you could see here that, the double stacking, okay, they understood that they needed to keep Oscar behind a little bit, so that's what they did. When the rain was coming and they needed to work out what tyres they needed to be on, they had a conversation and they made a decision about it. And you can see that they're learning from their previous mistakes. And Lando talked about that in the post-race press conference as well, didn't he? In the little interview afterwards, he said, "Look, we have made these mistakes and we're learning from them." What worries me about Ferrari is that they've been in a position where the rain has come down and they've been out on slicks. They've been in a position where the track has been drying and they've gone off on inters. They've been in that position and they do it season after season after season, and they don't learn. It's as if they think that strategy is something that you just make up with a little bit of mamma mia. It's not that. It has to be very, very it has to be precise, and that's what other teams are doing. And until Ferrari start to do that, I don't think they're going to get any further forward.
And the most damning indictment on all of Ferrari's woes came from the driver that just lost his seat to Lewis Hamilton, who wasn't even in the race. And he basically said that I knew exactly what Ferrari were going to do. And to their credit, they did exactly what everyone and their grandmother thought they would do. And he was there to help the guy that he is racing along with gain those positions on Ferrari because he knew it. And this is the problem, Shez, when you're so predictable that the drivers can sit on the sidelines and make them. Good God, Shez, they should have kept Carlos as a reserve driver, just put him on the pit wall for races. He could have made those better. No, they should have paid him a ton of money and said, well, by the time, but I mean, look at that. It is just that kind of an indictment, right? And so I'll sort of end here. I have optimism because these are errors that are fixable and they don't need a whole lot of time to fix. Yes, culturally, it might take a while, but having good communication, forcing over communication is probably a good thing for Ferrari. And I think that's something that Fred can do. Fred has shown the ability to stay calm in these situations, be able to work out something that works to a situation that is at least not hurting. Even if it's not going to win races, it can at least be, and that's what they needed this weekend. And I think I have faith in Fred doing that. So that's the only thing I have to hang on to right now at the moment.
I agree. It doesn't overreact, but simple fixes, I don't think it's going to be quite enough because
Well,
even
they're gonna. I mean, the performance difference is a different deal
the
altogether.
strategy thing was only one part of it. Operationally as well was a
Yeah.
problem. So you're talking about performance. I don't think, and even Lewis said this, I don't think we saw the best of that car because we just didn't exploit it in the way that it should have been. Fred's saying that the true pace of that car was what we had in FP2, but the problem was that the race team never changed it. They didn't account for the change in temperatures between Saturday and Sunday with wing flaps and tyre pressures, where everybody else went in different directions. They stayed static, and Lewis was saying, look, our prep laps were exactly the same no matter what the conditions were. We didn't change them at all. Like, I'm new to the team, so I can't, I don't have the information yet or the experience with the team to know that, but to know what the different run plans should be. But I know enough that in different situations your prep laps need to be different. They weren't doing that. So there's a problem, not just with the strategy side of it, but the operation side of it is also lacking, and there needs to be a big overhaul. It isn't just about the technical side of things. They may have a world-beating car. They may have a car that is the second best on the grid, but if you can't maximize its potential on any given weekend, it's pointless. It's pointless.
I agree with you. And if anything, this weekend should serve as a wake-up call for them, right? It seems like they've been sleeping and putting it on cruise throughout the season and the off season, and they cannot afford to do that. Like, I mean, it's the time for vibes and good feelings is over, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. The stopwatch is running now, and they have to fix it.
Yeah, I agree. And the worrying, and what annoys me is that they do know how to do this. Like, they pulled off that the Monza masterclass. They pulled off the Monaco masterclass. They understand what the dynamics of a race are supposed to be, but they need to be able to do that with variables thrown in as well. That's something that McLaren have learned. It's something that Red Bull do without even thinking now. Ferrari need to be the next up.
They need to do that, and Shez, you and I need to do a prayer to the rain gods every time there's rain in the weather forecast. That's two things we need to do.
Whether it starts or stops, I don't
Well,
know.
we're gonna do it here. No, whatever it is, just be one thing. One thing is what it needs. Cannot be changing. Either rain and rain all the time, or no rain. That's what we want.
Yeah, as an F1 fan, I don't want that. Changeable
Come on,
conditions
Chaz.
are best.
What do you guys think? We should do a rain prayer before these.
Oh my god. And on that note, let's call it. As usual, please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We will read every single one. We will reply to as many as we possibly can. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Fix it, Fred, please.